Well, I have a wonderful electronic invention I want you to see. It looks something like this.
3, 2, 1. Okay, hit. Hey guys, what's up? It's me again, Tom from TTT Tom's Tech Time. Let's get this episode started right away. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up and of course don't forget to subscribe in order to never again miss any of my upcoming episodes. By the way, you can download original footage for free on tomstechtime.com/Osmo Action. Let's get this started now. Here it is on the table. Let's now see what we get when opening up this tiny box. At first, the DJI Osmo Action. Here it is. It has a roundish futuristic lens and looks, well, I'd say like an action camera. Next, what's hiding inside this tiny accessories box? Ta-da, a manual. And a blue half English, half Chinese paper with a QR code printed onto it. What else do we find? 2 attachments for the camera, one for flat surfaces, another one for more curved ones like helmets for example. They both use original 3M double-sided bonding tape for a secure fixture. Next, DJI provides a screw to attach the camera to the adhesive attachments. Not spectacular, but necessary. Next in the box is a USB cable to charge the camera. And finally, inside a plastic case, the battery. Don't get too excited, it is not a spare battery, it is the only one that ships with the DJI Osmo Action. Now it's time to mentally prepare for 3 of the absolute highlights of the DJI Osmo Action. The small camera records with up to 60 frames per second in 4K, and if you want to film with 1080p Full HD, it records with a maximum of up to 240 frames per second, allowing you to shoot high-resolution slow-motion videos. The first real hammer is the camera's inbuilt digital stabilization, called Rock Steady. Take a look at how the shots look like with and without the stabilization turned on. It seems that DJI is not only good at building mechanical gimbals, but they also provide up-to-date digital image stabilization. Another major highlight and one of the reasons why I was absolutely thrilled to test this camera is that you can switch the image from the main back to the smaller front screen. That allows you to check your shots when having the camera, let's say, attached to a helmet or while vlogging. The small front screen is a game changer in action cameras. But enough of the highlights, let's talk some specs. The DJI Osmo Action measures 65 by 42 by 35 millimeters and it weighs approximately 126 without and 154 grams with its housing. Its body is durable and resists both freezing temperatures and the unforgiving heat without a murmur. Even while continuously recording, I never experienced any errors. With the housing attached, the DJI Osmo Action is water resistant up to a maximum depth of 11 meters. With the separately sold underwater housing, you will be able to take your Osmo Action with you even deeper. Clear recommendation of mine when filming underwater, the DJI Osmo Action is so cool. It's super easy to handle. The only thing that doesn't really work is unfortunately the touch display, so you have to use the buttons, but you can use the QS button here on the side to switch between photo and video mode, whatever you want, and then you can of course use the rec button here. The touch display doesn't work when it's wet. That's a bit of a downside, even though it's not really necessary to check your recordings underwater. And what was actually pretty cool too is that the audio was pretty clear underwater. I mean, you heard me talking. The DJI Osmo Action has two displays. First, a large 2.25 inches back display that has a touchscreen function built in. You control the settings of the camera by using the touchscreen. And it feels quite intuitive. With a swipe from top to bottom, you open up the general settings menu. If you swipe right to left, you get to the camera settings menu. Another swipe from the bottom to the top brings up the resolution and frame rate menu. And a swipe from the left to the right unveils your recordings. The display is larger than what we're used to from other action cameras, which makes playing with the settings or checking a recording more effective. But DJI wanted more. They installed a small 1.4 inches front display that's perfect for shooting vlogs, helmet-mounted shots, and those where you're filming yourself and cannot see the backwards-facing main display. It either takes 2 taps on the screen, a long press on the QS button, or the voice command screen switch to make the displays switch. Both displays are bright, about 750 nits to say it in tech words, and won't let you down in sunny surroundings. Usually displays eat up a lot of power, and they are one of the main reasons why batteries die fast. And not only does the DJI Osmo Action have a large back screen, but it has 2 screens in total. DJI somehow, and I cannot say how they solved it exactly, but they somehow managed it to make their battery last for about 2.5 hours, a bit less, during normal usage. That's a great value compared to the competition's action cameras. You find 3 buttons on the housing that you can even reach when wearing gloves. A power button goes first. Next, a record button to take photos or record videos. It as well functions as a fast record button. If the camera is turned off and you want it to start filming immediately, press the button once. The camera boots and immediately starts to record. Finally, at the side of the DJI Osmo Action, you find the QS, the quick switch button. You can either use it to switch between modes, like from regular filming to HDR filming to slow motion filming, time-lapse filming, or whatever other mode. If you press and hold the quick switch button for 2 seconds, you can switch between the 2 screens. I talk too much. That's why my voice gives up. Once we remove the Osmo Action's housing, we can open up the smaller cover, and underneath it we will then find a micro SD card slot, and right below it a USB-C connector to charge the camera with the included cable or to connect it to a computer. The DJI Osmo Action features 2 internal microphones. One at the top of the camera's housing and another one at the right-hand side of it, right above the speakers. Let's now go for another test that is often underrated but super important, really. Audio quality. You can right now listen to how the inbuilt microphones of the DJI Osmo Action sound like. There are some cars driving by, there are super loud birds, it's even raining a tiny bit. There's some wind. How does the audio sound if I now, let's say here, talk over my shoulder? Or if I talk to my feet? If I talk to the sky a tiny bit, can you still hear me well? It's raining cats and dogs. I'm about to do some camera testing, and then it happens to rain.
Now turn right.
Start recording. You guys can see that sometimes voice control comes in handy, especially in situations like this one. I'm sitting in a kayak and maybe the camera is attached to the front with one of these gluey adhesives and I just don't want to bend over. The risk is just too big for me to fall into the water, to tip over, especially now with holding this camera in my hand. And this is really where the voice control comes in handy. It works perfectly and I had no trouble using it at all, both for photos and for videos. Stop recording. You guys can see it functions incredibly well. We have heard and seen a lot already. Now it's time to look at the camera specs. The lens of the DJI Osmo Action looks unique. It is round and has kind of a futuristic looking detachable lens ring. It has a 145 degrees field of view, giving the recordings a typical action camera look. If you don't like the roundish edges and don't want to fix it yourself in post-production, you can enable the de-warp mode inside the camera that straightens the shots automatically. By the way, all shots shown in this video were filmed in the standard wide-angle style without the de-warp filter. The aperture is set to 2.8, which is quite an average value. In low-light situations, as most action cameras, the images suffer badly and look pretty grainy. A 1/2.3 inches CMOS sensor inside the camera makes the recorded results, especially during daytime of course, look crisp and sharp. When recording in 4K, you can use several frame rates, from a minimum of 24 up to 60 frames per second. When recording in Full HD, the frame rates rank from minimum 24 up to a maximum of 240 frames per second. That makes a 10 times slow motion video.
If you want to download some original ungraded files straight out of the camera, then go and check out tomtechtime.com/OsmoAction. You can download them without a registration, and of course it is for free. Go ahead, tomtechtime.com/OsmoAction.
Unfortunately, DJI's in-camera stabilization named Rocksteady, yeah, I know it's a fancy name, it is not available with all frame rates. It is available until maximum 60 frames per second, whether you're using the higher 4K or the lower 1080p resolution. And talking about Rocksteady, again, the level of stabilization you get is pretty overwhelming, but digitally stabilizing recordings always results in a loss of quality. When I align the very same shot once recorded with Rocksteady enabled and once without, you can see that the process crops and cuts away maybe 10% of the video. DJI installed another filmmaking mode to the Osmo Action, and that is the HDR mode. HDR stands for High Dynamic Range, and when you take a look at a comparison, one shot filmed with the standard settings, with the standard mode, and another shot filmed in the HDR mode, you can see that when taking a look at the HDR video, you see more details in both the shadows and highlights. Finally, that sums up to about one extra step of dynamic range, which is cool if you're really into editing, if you're really into color grading. But there is one downside to the HDR mode. Of course, you can use it in 4K, etc., but the Rocksteady image stabilization is unavailable when using the HDR mode. To me, that makes the HDR mode, unfortunately, superfluous. Owners of DJI drones can from now on party even harder. The Osmo Action features a standard color mode and the DJI typical decine-like mode. That is gonna make aligning the look of the cameras in case you want to mix your aerials with some action cam shots very comfortable. All shots shown in this video were recorded in standard mode. Even though the DJI Osmo Action is by far the technically fastest action camera I have ever seen, because of the high amount of data that it has to process when using the internal image stabilization, there is a quite noticeable delay. At 30 frames per second in 4K, it is bearable. But when filming with 60 frames per second, the delay is so striking that filming feels very awkward. I hope that DJI manages it to show an unstabilized version of the shots on the screen with no delay while recording the stabilized version to the microSD card. Another camera spec really caught my attention, this time a really good one, the maximum video bitrate. Even the best action cameras on the market don't exceed 80 megabits per second. When I checked the recordings of the new DJI Osmo Action, I was stunned to see that this tiny camera records continuously at 100 megabits per second. That's pretty cool. The less compressed the footage, the more information is available. Take a look at these 12 megapixels photographs that I recorded with the DJI Osmo Action. You can record both JPEG and RAW photographs. I admit it, I of course chose RAW photographs and I edited them a tiny bit using Lightroom. It only takes a few seconds to connect the DJI Osmo Action to your smartphone, and there is a specific app. It is named the DJI Mimo App. That app can control the camera. That means you can set everything up on the screen of your phone and then do the recording with the camera. That is pretty nice. You can, for example, transfer the files even in higher quality. That is pretty cool, to your smartphone from the camera right away, so you don't have to remove the microSD card too often. And of course, you have like an auto editor that edits some cool clips for you, and those clips usually look pretty cool.
"旅行中最幸运的，莫过于每到一个城市的。
In my case, the Mimo app is probably gonna stay unused most of the time. That is because I don't really see a need to use the app too often. Maybe once in a while when I really need to change some settings from the distance, yeah, then I can do that. But besides that, I have the voice control feature to turn the recordings on and off, and you can basically set up everything perfectly on the screen here. The screen is quite large for an action camera, so it's quite comfortable. There's one big downside to the app, and that is that there is no live streaming feature. And I love the live streaming functions. All the DJI drones have that feature. You can live stream to Facebook, you can live broadcast to YouTube, to other platforms, and I loved it. And for some reason, they're not gonna implement that to the Mimo app. I already asked them, and at least in the near future, they're not gonna implement a live streaming feature. I think that DJI unveiled a really good action camera. It plays in the absolute first league of action cameras. The frontal display is absolutely handy to have for vlogging, for taking selfies and all of that, and sometimes even for having unusual angles. So for example, when I attached the camera to my helmet and then had it film myself, I could always check everything on here. Plus that the processor is incredibly fast. No action camera on the market is faster than this thing. And of course there are some downsides too. So first of all, this weird lagging is really a bit annoying because when I'm, for example, setting up a shot, you know, I'm moving like a bit around here, then I never really know what I'm filming. It always is like a second behind when I'm, for example, filming with the rock steady mode in 60 frames per second. That can be quite annoying. Next to that, the live streaming function of the app is missing, and in general, some more intelligent modes, some cool fancy schmancy modes, even though usually you don't need these modes. Usually it's all coming down to the video quality, to the audio quality, and the audio quality I think was pretty good too. For an action camera, of course, it cannot compete to a microphone like this, but maybe take a look at the size, and this thing is not even a microphone. This thing is a camera with displays, and the microphones are teeny tiny. What shall I say? In the end, I think this thing is really worth the bucks, and I'm hoping to see some of the things that I now mentioned, some of the cons, to be solved with the next generation. I'm looking so forward to that because now we really have an open battle when it comes to action cameras. GoPro versus DJI, that's going to be super exciting over the next years. Personally, I like them both, the GoPro and DJI, but because I like to vlog and all of that, I think I will be sticking and staying from now on with the Osmo Action and its frontal display and the superb audio and video quality, and of course, the image stabilization. By the way, when it comes to the image stabilization, I must admit it's not like it was a big shock to me when I saw it, when I was like, oh wow, that's so amazing. No, that's not how it was, because DJI is into image stabilization. The whole time, whenever they come up with a drone, it has like a stabilized camera. They really have a lot of knowledge on that field. Of course, this is not a gimbal, this is digital stabilization, but I expected nothing less than a very good level of stabilization. And they fulfilled that, and I'm super happy with this camera, and I'm talking way too much. Check out the product links in the description below this video. Don't forget to download some original files from tomstechtime.com/Osmo Action. Now, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, don't forget to subscribe in order to never again miss any of my upcoming episodes again.